get it.
Mbijan aganya.
Albaka.
Mbaka important.
Yo, nga transfer la sto.
Ya transfer la.
Ha, code nyingi.
Okay. Korsa. Nsila ID soto.
Sa soto. Sorry. I get it.
Mbijan bro.
Albaka.
Mbaka.
Bara alla service o tariya. Mbale ki janna nun kunu bara tariya.
Jannom yona forest de bureau. Gambia tonkon na no mbali ya bere. Birim koyna fo kato.
Bari si kodo kino kato ni fo bolong blabe to.
56 branches mola soto Gambia jam.
Ha?
Gambia kono ani Gambia bantala bankol. Nka kodo kiya bere. Kodo sifa fo falindiro fo nyaadi lafta memmen na kodi to poto nin kodi maraw. Jannam number 1 di nyonta. Andum fana nata anoda enterprise sotale. Wolam nyindi ko domorol fana kol fana be firale le dadi ma ni domorol ni fana beteat. Gambia dawda yalo ngam fa kendol sotale je.
Wo moyo diat.
Apelenta
ni wo ka ni lafta nyelen kendol e bina.
Yalo bu kanyi la ko la baraka ba.
Yalo ndel chosano lo.
Abaraka.
Gamcell data, now even better. Enjoy 20% extra data on all Gamcell data bundles. Buy 20 megabytes and get extra 4 megabytes. Buy 50 megabytes and get extra 10 megabytes. Buy 100 megabytes and get extra 20 megabytes. Any amount of Gamcell data bundle you buy, you will receive 20% extra data for free. Dial *302 data amount hash or go to your Yaiborom menu and choose your data bundle now. Gamcell data, it's fast, lasts longer and very reliable. Gamcell Yaiborom.
Alright.
Honey, did you remind him that the last time he sent the money, it was not enough to buy all the provisions?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell him.
Are you guys talking about money transfer to buy provisions?
Yes.
But
Don't you know about Baluwo?
Baluwo? What is Baluwo?
Baluwo is a service that your son can use to send provisions directly to you guys from the shop. And you don't have to worry about the exchange rate.
Tell me how Baluwo works.
It's very simple.
Just log on to baluwo.com and shop, or download the app on your phone. You can shop on the website or using the app to buy online basic products for your family and friends. With Baluwo, you decide what your money is spent on. Your money, your choice. Buy online products for your family and friends in the Gambia, Senegal, Nigeria or Mali. Baluwo, better than sending money.
For the first time in the history of the Gambia, Gambia Printing Publishing Corporation proudly introduces the Biliomatic exercise book printing machine. The machine has the capacity to print more than 20,000 books per hour. Yes, 20,000 books per hour. It also prints magazines, newspapers, calendars, flyers, normal books and all kinds of printed documents plus items at affordable prices. With the Biliomatic printing machine, GPPC can now render high quality and non-size restricted printing service supply across the sub-region. Rush now and partner with GPPC for all your public and private printing service needs. Print with us today and you'd be offered highly professional, reliable and efficient service delivery by our team of experts. The Gambia Printing and Publishing Corporation is here to meet all demands and is reliable at all times. For more info, contact us on 437-4493 or 437-4402. GPPC is Gambian and it's yours.
Hello and welcome to the Brunch on Kerr Fatou Live. I'm Lamin Cham. Now, this is our weekly look, of course, at major stories of the week. This week, we focus entirely on the 2023 budget that was presented to the National Assembly by the Minister of Finance, Kerr, on Friday.
With me in the studio is Alagie Jallow. He is an official from the Revenue and Policy Department of the Ministry of Finance, and he will take us through to all what we need to know about the 2023 budget. Of course, what time to allow, of course, as the whole nation now waits after the scrutiny of the parliamentarians as to how our country's finance will be distributed this time round. Alagie, welcome to the Brunch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now you work in the revenue policy and tax and revenue policy.
Revenue and tax policy.
Revenue and tax policy at the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah.
So one should assume that, of course, all the areas that people have concerning taxation and revenue in the budget probably have your inputs in. What do you make, when the minister presented the budget, the first things I hear from people around is that it is, there are criticisms that it is not a good budget. For example, I have had even our alien community in the Gambia talking about the area that affects them, that taxes on the various permits and entry visas have been increased. There were issues as to the amount of money proposed for parliamentarians was ridiculously high. Many people criticize it. So how would you justify this budget? What inspired it? Why do you think it's a good budget? Why did the minister say thinks that this is a good budget?
Thank you, Mr. Cham. Maybe before I proceed to answering your questions, I want to maybe give a brief background as to how
exactly
the budget process works.
Yeah.
The issue of the budget being a good or a bad budget, I think that's an issue of subjectivity. Mm-hmm. But now coming to the process of budget preparation, the budget preparation starts months back before it becomes a public knowledge. It starts by what we call the preparation of a medium-term economic fiscal framework that defines broad government policy in terms of economics and financial policies that also give a medium-term prospects of the growth pattern in the country. And that is the foundation of any budget preparation, because in the sense that would inform where we think that GDP would head. Yeah. And as we all know globally, the best proxy for revenue forecasting is GDP. Yeah. So you must first know what is the direction of your GDP, so you are able to know what is the revenue you expect during the course of the upcoming fiscal year, and of that revenue, how do you apportion that to expenditure of various ministries, departments, and agencies. So essentially, the budget preparation starts way back at the definition of the macro framework, which is embedded in the medium-term economic fiscal framework that covers a period of 3 years. So from that, you get what we call a resource envelope. That is the revenue that we anticipate to be collected during the course of the fiscal year. And of this revenue, what you do is you first take what we call statutory expenditures from that resource envelope, which is payment of salaries and payment of debts. And
those are statutory.
These are statutory.
Non-negotiable.
Yeah. So what you do is from the resource envelope of X, you have to take interest payments and personnel costs. Okay. So what is left is what is taken to be the distributable resource envelope to sectors. And it is on the basis of what is left, we do what we call budget ceilings for MDAs. To say Ministry XYZ, this is the ceiling up to which you can spend during the course of the fiscal year. Ministry XYZ, this is also what you can spend. But bearing in mind what is their sector strategic plan that are costed. Okay. Because all those strategic plans and projects of those sectors are factored in the determination of their budget ceilings. So essentially, this is the first 2 steps of the budget preparation. So when the ceiling is determined and the circular is released, that is called a budget call circular, that call on sectors to submit their budget proposal based on the ceilings that are given to them. So they will submit based on what is given to them, and they will be given a timeline. But before they submit the budget, we conduct what we call a pre-budget consultative workshop, where all ministries, departments, and agencies, and even civil society and private sector are participating to give an inside overview of what we expect to be the fiscal outlook for the budget that is in question for preparation. And then also give them an insight as to how the Ministry of Finance expect them to prepare their budget for submission, such that when they come for bilateral, which is the next stage after the budget consultative workshop, then there is no lot of controversy and lot of ambiguity as to their submission and the position of the Ministry of Finance. So these are the few first steps of the budget preparation. So when that is done, at the deadline of the date given for submission of their budget proposals, then they are called for a bilateral to come and defend their budget.
Come to defend.
Yeah, so essentially what happens is in many times you see ministries, departments, and agencies coming to give budget proposals that are over and above their budget ceiling, with adequate justification, of course. But you don't, this is something that is very common in a developing country or a poor country like the Gambia, where we can hardly meet up our development needs. So if you tell somebody to go and prepare a budget, who normally think that we have enough money, but we don't. Anyway, so that's why we have that ceiling. The ceiling is to guide, and that ceiling also is prepared making consideration of several fundamental economic factors, one of which is our debt sustainability.
Okay.
Because in as much as you want to allow sectors to spend, you must also bear in mind your capacity to repay, such that we do not fall into a debt distress as what is happening in Ghana, as everybody have seen. So we bear in mind the debt sustainability issues. We also bear in mind the crowding out effect of deficit financing, as well as also the capacity of sectors to absorb what they've been given in terms of envelope.
Right, now the minister initially projected that the monies from grants and revenues is made to be $31 billion this time around. Eventually, after the scrutiny of the parliamentarians, how much was left?
The envelope that minister discussed is both revenue and grants.
Yes.
That is what is domestically generated and what is externally
generated,
given to Gambia in the form of budget loans and grants. Budget support, essentially. So, but again, maybe coming back to the point of like the National Assembly allocation. As per the provisions of the Constitution, there are 4 institutions that are not required to submit their budget to the Ministry of Finance.
Which are?
Which is the National Assembly, the National Audit, the Independent Electoral Commission, and the Judiciary.
Who decides for those people what they get?
What happens is they prepare their budgets and they'll submit to the executive. And then on the basis of what they submit, the Ministry of Finance would be required to make an assessment of their budget independently and then provide advice to the executive, which would be attached to their submission and then sent to the National Assembly. So technically what we are saying, we do not have responsibility to say we would cut the budget of these 4 independent institutions, because it is in the provisions of the Constitution that they submit directly to the executive and the executive transmit that to the National Assembly.
So this means
we provide advice before they submit to the National Assembly, but we have no right to change the content of what they have submitted.
So if, in this case, if eventually Parliament got what they want, what has been proposed, it is then fair to say that this is possible through the agreement of the executive, of course.
What happened, the budget ceiling that I referred to earlier on covers the National Assembly
too. And these 4 institutions.
All
despite the fact that they have that leeway to do their own, it has to be within this.
Because what is happening, you in determining your resource envelope, you pay attention to economic variables. That is debt sustainability, your capacity to repay, and also what amount of deficit can you run as per our international engagements with the IMF, the World Bank, and all those things. But also bearing in mind what is the implication of running an excessive budget deficit. As a small country, you want to also grow the private sector. So which means technically you must not excessively borrow to crowd them out. So you must have that limit put in place such that when you have a budget deficit, the financing of that budget deficit does not compromise macroeconomic stability. And it is in this spirit that the resource envelope is developed, and also the budget ceiling is also developed, factoring in mind there are 2 statutory expenditures that are already taken out of the resource envelope, and the remaining is what is distributable based on ceilings to sectors.
Apart from these 4 institutions you talk about, which have been empowered by the Constitution to come up with their own budgets,
yes,
all the other areas, they have to be allocated or proposed by your ministry?
No, what we do, like I said, is to determine their budget ceiling.
That's what I'm saying.
And they go and prepare their budget based on the ceiling that is provided. And they submit to the Ministry of Finance. We call them for bilateral.
But that is excluding these 4, isn't it?
Excluding these 4. These 4 do not come for
bilaterals, because for them they have...
Exactly, they do not come for bilateral. They go directly submit to the executive, and the executive would require the Ministry of Finance to give an assessment and advice on the budgets that are submitted by this.
That's the IEC,
the National Assembly, the National Audit and the Judiciary.
This is in view of the fact that they have been empowered by the Constitution to be able to do that.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Because what happened is the Ministry of Finance operates on the basis of the Public Finance Act. And also the Constitution. So in this case, the Constitution takes precedence as to what happens in terms of the budget of these 4 independent institutions.
Okay, before coming to this new budget, there have been suggestions that before even you draw a new budget, you would have gone back to the old budget and assess how much have been spent according to the Financial Act of Management and come out with a report. They said there are areas that auditors actually raised very tangible queries, but no action have been taken about those things, especially monies that have not been recovered. So do you need to go back to the old budget and check? Don't you have a responsibility to see how have that been spent according to how you projected and planned it the last fiscal year?
You know what happened? In the course of implementing a budget, you have what we call periodic reporting.
Exactly.
So this periodic reporting, assess the implementation of the approved budget based on what sectors are spending. The approved budget and what are you spending. So there are periodic reports that are prepared by the Directorate of Budget that is published at the Ministry's website to inform sectors and civil society and any interested citizen as to how the budget has been implemented by the different accounting officers. Accounting officers in this case are the permanent secretaries.
So what happened where there are queries by the auditors? Because there have been a lot of queries. For example, the Ministry of Health and so many, even President's Office expenditures have been queried. What happened?
That is possible, but again, that query has to be handled by the accounting officers, because when the budget is approved, it is entrusted in the hands of different accounting officers who have oversight and executing powers of those budgets. So in essence, what we are saying is we approve your budget based on this ceiling and you have to implement it based on XYZ. And the reason why we do that is to empower sectors to implement their budget based on their strategic plans. But the other thing is that what Ministry of Finance have done recently is to post internal auditors in every ministry, department and agency, such that every expenditure that is done is in line with the budget that is approved and in line with the Public Financial Act. And in that way, you are able to mitigate the risk of having this kind of queries.
But where they happen, what is the responsibility of the ministry, your ministry, and in determining how you go about the next time you are dispensing money, for the budget of this particular edition? What happened next? Because we had auditors complaining about procurements that have not been, done through due process. We had unretired impressed and so on. So many areas in the group. What happened where this occurs? What is the responsibility of the ministry to ensure that before you do the next budgeting for them, you tackle these issues that are raised by the auditors?
I think what the ministry have done in recent times to addressing unretired impress, for instance, is to put a ceiling. Mm-hmm. Previously, in the former regime, there was no such ceiling that is concrete as to how much somebody can be given an impress. But now, the maximum you can get is 100,000.
100,000.
100,000. That is a budget policy now.
Okay.
And to the extent possible, we try to limit even the issuance of that impress, because now the government has gone essentially digital. So we do not issue cash. What we do, the transfer is made into your account for you to execute. And I can tell you recently, impresses are hard to come by because of the problems that were associated with this.
I see.
Now on the issue of procurement, that's why the government and the Ministry of Finance is trying to strengthen procurement processes and procurement legal framework. And maybe with the passage of the recent public procurement bill, that is going to address a good part of, because it's a whole new bill. It is going to repeal the old one. So it is a whole new bill that will replace the 2014 Act that would give strengthened power, legal framework, and also oversight to the GPPA to conduct procurement, quality assurance, and control systems.
Before the budget speech, the ministry or minister gave the impression there wouldn't be a raise in taxes. Is that the case? Many people disagree with that.
There has not been any raise in taxes, in the sense that most of the ones that have been introduced recently, they are called non-tax.
Why do you call it?
Because you have tax, and you have non-tax.
Can you define? Because at the end of the day, people have to pay more.
Yeah, those are fees essentially.
Yes.
Like the immigration one, those are fees.
Yeah.
They are not taxes.
Okay.
And that one is also based on an informed judgment by the Department of Immigration that has conducted an extensive research in the sub-region to see what are the applicable fees that are payable by the category of the list that was read by the minister during his speech yesterday. That even covered both Lusophone countries within the sub-region, Francophonie, and then the English-speaking countries. And it was realized that our rates are much, much lower compared to what obtains in the sub-region. So to realign and also make so that we are not, caught off guard in terms of the cost, because the issuance of these permits involve a lot of costs, and that cost must be paid for by the person who is applying for this. It involves manpower, it involves electricity, it involves transport, it involves a whole lot of things. So those things need to be paid for. So that right price is what informs the Ministry of Interior through the Immigration Department to conduct a region-wide assessment to see what is the most appropriate level of fees that should be payable by this.
So according to you, this is informed by the relevant line ministry?
Absolutely.
Example, Ministry of Interior / Immigration.
Yes, we avoid the issue of independent, raising of fees or user fees, they call it, without due consultation. Because sectors are expert in this domain.
But there have been issues already. I mean, there have been voices that, these recent increments really are just, I'm surprised you said, immigration said, Gambian ones are far lower than what is charged elsewhere. But
that is true.
That is true,
yes.
to some extent view.
Yeah.
What about the case, because in some other countries, things like alien cards doesn't exist among West Africa, especially West African citizens?
It does exist.
You sure all over?
It's just called residence permit.
It's in Senegal. Do Gambians?
I am not sure of Senegal, but I know there is no country where you go in this world that you do not have an identity.
Yeah, but the thing is, in the ECOWAS protocols, which guarantees free movement of people and goods and free residence in each member country to take up job or business, is it? In the past, it has been said that it's only Gambia which introduced this alien.
No. Because even the ECOWAS protocol says 90 days.
Permits, I know.
Yeah. So
because permit is different from alien.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is this alien exists in all the West African countries? Only in the Gambia you have alien and permit.
I'm sure the immigration department has done a good job to knowing what is applicable, and that's why they have advised the Ministry of Finance through the Ministry of Interior to up the fees. So I'm not maybe privy to what other countries call it.
Yeah.
The name might differ, but I can guarantee you there is such kind of fees that are charged by other countries.
All right, let's talk about the revenues. For example, the toll fees at the bridge, all those have been issues. I remember the president had to tackle those criticisms from politicians and other people as to how and why the bridges that have been built from grants, people have been charged, to travel across them. What inspired that idea?
Yeah, it's true they were built through grants.
Yes.
But their maintenance would come on the back of the government of the Gambia. And unless you make a provision for such, when they fall due for maintenance, where would you go to get the money? Because you must save for that rainy day, and it's gonna come eventually. Because all this infrastructure have a lifespan, of which when they reach to that level, they will require some maintenance. And toll fees are common, and they are becoming a new normal, even in Africa.
And not just Gambia.
In the West, it has been there for many, many years.
Yeah.
But in Africa, it's becoming a new normal. Because our infrastructure deficit is so high, and we need a very consistent revenue stream to be able to finance this. Two, when they fall due for maintenance, you already have the monies available to maintain these things.
Okay.
Because if they are not maintained, at the time that they are fully provisioned for depreciation, those users who are supposed to be using it will not be able to use it because they are not usable. Because the safety controls and also the quality assurance of those infrastructure would not be able to be maintained by government because there are no monies. Government have competing priorities. So, and I think that is one thing that people also need to understand.
Yeah, but who determines the prices paid? The other issue has been that users in there said it's far too expensive for them to afford. For example, in the case of Wuli Basse, local people reported seeing the canoes, the small boats that used to transport people coming back to business because people cannot afford to pay the bridges. So who determines that?
The determination of the tariff is a multi-stakeholder matter.
Yeah, but who has the highest responsibility? Not the finance, because finance at the end of the day is the one who has the ultimate authority to collect or to levy on.
But again, I think it's a multi-stakeholder matter. That is the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, the Ministry of Transport, or the Ministry of Works and Transport. You have the Ministry of Trade, the Ministry of Finance, and which the Accountant General also plays a part. So these are the stakeholders that come, and also the Transport Union. Because when we do this thing, at the end of the consultation in-house, we also consult with the Transport Union to make sure that there is no public resentment and outcry on the tariff that are being administered on this public infrastructure. Yeah.
The last time we came here, there was a storm, between your ministry and the oil marketing companies, and your ministry claimed you paid a lot of subsidies, to make sure that fuel is available affordably to the population. How much in this budget have you tackled subsidies?
We know the global fuel prices have started coming down. But again, I think at the beginning of the speech yesterday, it was made known public that the outlook for the global economy is still very uncertain. Because what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, we still do not know when it's going to end. And the strengthening of the US dollar, we still do not know when it's going to stabilize. So also OPEC claiming that they might at some point cut the production about 1 million barrels a day would also, we don't know how long that would stay in place. So all these factors being put in place, we are still anticipating that the subsidy on fuel will continue in the course of the 2023 fiscal year. However, at a much lower, level compared to what it has been this.
So you mean you will not pay more subsidies? You will not give more subsidies now than you did before?
If the current outlook continues, that is the decline in the global oil prices continues, and also at some point that Russia and Ukraine, the war comes to stop, but also paying attention to the dollar strengthening against all major trading currency. If that reversal happens or it stabilizes at the current level, then we might say that it is safe to say we might not pay as much subsidy as we paid this year.
Right. Well, let's go to the personal emoluments. I mean, your minister or the government at the time promised that there's going to be a new grading system. It did not happen, but critics say the government took a back door to put in a 30% increment on stuff like that, which many people found to be not just inadequate but unfair for people who earns very little compared to others who earn higher. What is going to be the fate of the new grading system? Is it going to come? Did this budget cover it, and where and how?
Maybe I would say this budget does not cover the pay and grading
But the government
system.
promised that it's going to look, or are they now satisfied that this 30% is what they were?
The Personnel Management Office is still doing more work.
They claim to have done everything.
Yeah, but like I started at the beginning of this conversation, is we pay attention to the macro framework. And that macro framework, anything that comes to destabilize it is a recipe for disaster. We all have seen what is happening in Ghana right now.
Yes.
Inflation in Ghana is more than 30%.
Yes.
Their currency have lost value more than 15-20%. And right now they are already in the distress. And we want to avoid this kind of situation. Anything that cannot be afforded within the existing macro framework that point to sustainability, we have to make sure that we...
So this new grading system is not affordable?
There are different options.
Well, they was promised by the government.
Yeah, but there are different options in the new pay and grading system. So
tell me what this 30% that has gone.
No, the 30% is off the new pay and grading system. Yeah, because it was meant to.
It's a temporary measure.
It's a temporary measure until such a time that the new pay and.
That is why I said, how soon will you have? You don't have it in this budget, and how soon?
I cannot give you.
We're going to stick with this 30%. It's no longer going to be temporary. It's going to be here forever.
Not necessarily. There are certain reforms that need to be done that would create the necessary fiscal space to be able to implement some of these pay and grading system. But again, I cannot say with certitude that the 30% is a permanent thing, or the pay and grading system would not come into play. That we cannot tell, because up till now we don't know. Like it is normally said, we don't know what happens in the future, because in the future we are all dead.
Okay.
Right? So if you don't know what happens in the future, it's very difficult to talk about what happens in the future. So, but what I can
Yet
tell
you people are very good at projecting what will happen in the future.
Yeah.
In terms of your revenue.
Projections. Yeah, we do projections based on the best information that we have at the time. So, but it's also best that it becomes a very short horizon projections, because the information and economic dynamics change very rapidly. So that's why we avoid going too long into the feature in terms of projections or saying what is the outlook. And I'm sure the Personnel Management Office that has now been transformed into a Ministry of Public Administration is going to re-engage the Ministry of Finance and other stakeholders as to how they think is best to implement this pay and grading system.
Looking at the revenue allocations, certain people feel that certain ministries that's right, have less money than they should have, whereas others have luxury of having a lot of money that they actually need. I can give you examples, but what do you say to those criticisms? Like, for example, the Ministry of Sports has the least budget every time it happens like that. Although your ministry always, argue that there are other avenues like the sports levy and whatever, but even that was difficult to access. The sports ministry, you always claim that the youths need employment. The government pride itself of giving attention to women, men, youth affairs. Yet the Ministry of Sports get the list. Youth on Sports get the list of the money. Who determines this? I mean, as far as I know, apart from those 4 institutions, you mean these budgets come from the ministry, and then your finance ministry eventually, approve the allocations. Why is it that the Ministry of Youth and Sports always get the list?
I wouldn't say they get the list because, like I said,
that's the case. That's what is happening every time.
Sometimes we also need to understand there are other expenditures that are associated to the youth and sport that might not necessarily be counted when they talk about these numbers. If you take the reconstruction of the stadium, for instance,
yes,
it's above 100 million.
Yes.
And if you put that back in the allocation for the ministry, you might find out that it might not be the least provision ministry. But again, when we determine the ceilings are determined based on their sector strategic plans.
So these strategic plans have been given by the ministries themselves?
Yeah, the ministries themselves would submit a strategic plan to the Ministry of Finance Planning Department. And that's why the Ministry of Finance Planning Department always requests that these strategic plans are costed. And covering a period of time. So it's on the basis of this that Ministry of Finance would also make a judgment, bearing in mind what are the ongoing projects that are implemented by ministries, departments, and agencies that would require funding in the course of the fiscal year that is coming or is being prepared for. So all those things are made in view of what is their ceiling as to what they can be allowed to spend during the fiscal year that is in question.
And when you go to the biggest ministries also that get monies, off your mind yourself, one would have to Ministry of Health, one Ministry of Education, because of its large size and of personnel, etc., would have got more money. But offices like even National Assembly and the President's Office don't have more money than what is.
No, if you look at the budget itself, the social sectors constitute 33% of the budget.
And when you say social sector,
that is agriculture, health, education.
33% of the budget.
33% of the budget.
But even that is small, isn't
but
it?
remember, we have only 3 ministries.
67% is
only 3 ministries taking like 33% of the budget.
Yeah, I can.
And then if you look at, we have almost 20-something ministries or more.
Okay.
So you have to. People need to put it into perspective.
Okay.
You don't look at it independently like that. You have to do a comparative of what is it that they're getting of how many people involved in that particular.
Yeah, but you also look at their importance and relevance.
And that's why there has been that much allocation.
And yet people feel it's not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, you can cut from other things that are seen as luxuries. Like these heavy allowances that have been given to ministers, permanent secretaries, parliamentarians, speakers. They are unnecessary. They could have been allocated for this social sector you're talking about.
Yeah, maybe that's something that the Ministry of Finance will look into. But again, we have tried as much as possible to also reallocate funding to social sectors that need it the most. But you have to also bear in mind there is what we call the absorption capacity. You don't also want to tie the money in a sector that has some absorption capacity issues. I'm not saying they have issues, but you don't want to also give them money for which over a period of time they would not be able to execute. Otherwise, you are stifling other sectors that may essentially need this money to do the basic services that they owe to the public.
All right, let's still with personnel. Okay, let's talk about generally the Ministry of Finance. The last time there was really, I don't know, this might not be directly under your revenue or something. Okay, let's talk about the GRA, for example. It was estimated that in a year they collect $12 billion. But then there were concerns that with the kind of subsidies they said the government is giving, there's going to be less money that's been collected. They will collect. Given the fact that you think that if this global trend continues, stabilizes, like there is more certainty from the Ukraine and other things, then of course you will not give as much subsidies as you did before. This then could mean that the GRA will be able to collect as many revenues for as much money as possible. How much do you estimate they will get from these budgets, in the life of this budget? How much are estimated to be collected domestically?
Domestically, you know, when we talk about domestically, you have both GRA and
non-GRA.
So domestically, we are looking somewhere around 17 point something billion, yeah. So that is what domestically is estimated to be generated in 2023 fiscal year. Yeah. And of that, about 95% is GRA. Yeah.
Non-GRA include Gambia Ports Authority, etc. Dividends payments and stuff.
And other government investment, and also other like ID cards, driver's license, royalties from the petroleum industry, like in terms of mining, those kind of things.
All right. Okay, continuing, let's talk about the debt. You said that care is always taken when you're projecting to make sure that you don't get into a situation where you cannot service or the country cannot afford to get to take any more debts. How bad is the situation now? Let's talk about it later, but let's come to in layman terms. Many people believe that we just have borrowed too much for us to ever be able to be solvent in the near future.
Yes, currently as we speak, our debt is about 83.5% of GDP.
83.5% of our gross domestic product.
Yes.
Wow. That means we are not very far from being strangled.
Not necessarily, because the regional benchmark is about 70%.
Well, we are above that now.
Yeah, but most countries even are worse.
So we don't want to get there.
Yeah, we are not getting there, and that's why we are making so that our macro framework is designed in such a way that it reverses that growth level in terms of debt. So to the extent that that's why also sectors also need to understand there are other conditions that would inform what they can be allocated to spend on. Because you don't want to give sectors more money just for you to go and borrow that money and give it to them and then start increasing the and when you increase the interest rates, inflation goes up, that money you are giving them is not able to get them anything. Like it happens in Ghana right now. Inflation is by the second.
Yeah, it's going terrible.
So no matter how much money you have, it doesn't worth much. And those are the kind of things that people need to understand.
So you kept referring to Ghana very
because they're in a very precarious situation, and we must learn. It's too close to us.
Yes.
For not to learn.
So what has been the problem?
Yeah.
Not that I'm concerned with what do you think led to this in Ghana, and it could have been prevented from here?
Yeah, they were borrowing, and to the extent that they were borrowing from the international market, commercial market.
We're doing that the same thing.
No, we are not doing that. We are not borrowing at non-concession. They are borrowing at market terms.
I see.
We are not borrowing at market terms.
Okay.
And that's why we are able to manage our debt growth. We are borrowing at concessional terms.
I see.
It's different from borrowing at
borrowing. I see.
If you borrow at market, the conditions are much more
harsh. than concession.
One change in the economic dynamics of the global economy,
We can escalate.
triggers some debt distress.
So by concession, you means you agree on favorable terms.
Yeah, the terms are very favorable. You know, the maturity.
Yeah, the maturity grace period,
the
interest rates.
But
Okay.
when you are dealing with a commercial lender,
Yeah,
the interest rate is based on the market.
based on the
conditions.
market forces.
But for us, in our case,
Yeah.
we are borrowing at concessional, so our interest rate are not market driven.
Okay.
Yeah, and the grace period is much longer, and also the maturity is much longer. But in the commercial market, it's not long because they take in depositors' funds to lend to you. So that maturity mismatch, they need to manage, and that's why the conditions are different.
All right, Mr. Jallow, we'll come back after a 5 minutes break. We will change, or maybe we could even continue. I think the technicians noticed that we can do better by boosting the quality of sound from your microphone. All right. So we continue. Okay, what can we do to reduce this debt itself in terms of your, for example, if we are to rely on the Minister of Finance for advice from the government to reduce this deficit? Because the layman would always say, okay, since you don't produce anything that goes, that is exported, you know, for you to get foreign exchange and other earnings, you definitely can't finance your deficit. You have to borrow. But apart from that, any other tangible things that your ministry is doing to ensure that our debt portfolio goes down?
The first thing is to ensure that there's quality spending. Quality spending in the sense that you are spending your money in areas that yield dividend and increase
That is why I told you.
Our productive capacity.
That's why I told you from the beginning that many people felt that the government is spending on useless things rather than things that could have really helped.
I don't think that is because spending in education, health, agriculture, and
that's understandable, but
because these are the foundations of the
that's
economy.
understandable. But
And this is what would generate
very high allowances and unnecessary personal emoluments. That's why we can talk about for others.
No, personal emolument is part of it because you must have people to make sure that those things
they must not be paid at the expense of others who are the vast majority of people who doesn't earn those things.
Yeah, but let me just respond.
All right, let's come to that. You said, okay, in order to reduce the debt portfolio, you have to spend wisely.
Yeah, the spending quality must be adequate.
Okay.
The spending quality in the sense that you must spend in sectors that generate growth to be able to pay whatsoever loan you have taken to spend on that.
Yeah, and how many of such areas do we have here? Well, effectively that.
We have in agriculture, in education, in health, in infrastructure.
How much agricultural produce do we have here that we actually can harness to ensure that we have a value chain? How much value do we add to the chain of production to ensure that we have maximum yields from that agriculture? Where?
Groundnut is there, vegetable is there.
Groundnut trade is coming down.
Yeah, but that's why now you are seeing horticulture taking a big, direction. Fishing is also one.
Okay.
Because as we speak now, fishing is about half of the agricultural sector.
It has taken
fishing
almost taken over crop production.
Almost half of the sector is fishing. The GDP in the sector, almost half of it is fishing now, and it is in high value addition. So but that is one. The other thing is that while there is need to ensure spending quality, there is also need to ensure that whatsoever you do in terms of borrowing is consistent with your macro framework. Your capacity to repay, that is your borrowing condition, your borrowing terms. But again, as government, you must also bear in mind the need to have private sector to lead, because they are the generators of wealth. And that's why if you look at the budget this year, we have reduced our domestic borrowing by 50-something%. Is to allow the private sector to come in and borrow at lower and generate the growth that is necessary to grease the wheel of economic activities. So this way you generate wealth, you generate employment, generate income that would allow government to generate more taxes that would eventually imply that you need less to borrow, and that way you'll be able to reduce your debt.
Now, you must have taken a look at the Ministry of Works budget. I think you have close to 2 billion allocated for that, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is because part of the problem is the government is itself funding major road projects such as the Nyomi Hakalang Road and other roads around the country. But then people's argument is that why do you think it is really prudent to spend just kind of a lot of money for those kind of projects? Because you see, the government believe in too much in infrastructure, too much in people to see, things that they can claim, they can score political points in, and then they go invest a lot of money on Hakalan and other roads so that people can see and credit them politically for that. When actually, critical areas, as you're talking about, which produces actually, growth, could have been given that much money.
Yeah, but infrastructure is part of economic development.
Yeah.
If you produce and you don't have the necessary infrastructure to do the market linkages, that becomes much more problematic.
You are talking the politician's language.
No, it's not about politics.
That's what they always argue.
Anyway, for me, I'm not a politician.
Yeah,
but what I'm trying to make sense out of is, infrastructure is part of the grease system of economic activities. If you don't have the necessary infrastructure to connect the markets, the production centers to market, then you cannot be able to add value. Yeah, but again, infrastructure also decentralizes economic activities.
Yeah, we know
some of these places might be centers of growth,
inaccessible
centers of growth, and because they are potential centers of growth, but they lack the infrastructure. Private investors don't go there. For example, it's a way of trying to attract people to settle in those areas in such a way that they look at the comparative advantages of those particular places to set up businesses, generate information.
For example, Alberta may have more tourism potential benefits than it does now because of lack of a good road. That's possible. But then there is this obsession with governments of the day. They want to be seen to be doing something, and they're obsessed with, infrastructure projects to an extent that, this is what they want people to see. It's like for the optics. They want people to see when actually things that are really killing people every day, it needs more attention, but they're not focusing on that because they want people to see that they're doing something. Those are the areas I'm talking about.
I know, but again, I think infrastructure is an essential part of economic development, and it's something that we lack as a country. We have seen the infrastructure deficit, the road that they're constructing right now, because it's basically the only road. Now you see how people are struggling.
Yeah, the battle hand in hand.
Yes. So there are no diversions.
That one is not a grant and not that's a loan, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a loan.
Is it captured in your budget?
Yeah, every loan is captured in the budget. All of it is captured on the project.
That is 23 million, is it?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah. So infrastructure is necessary. If you go to other countries that have been able to grow, they have invested heavily in infrastructure to connect, the market, value chain addition, and also promote, investment. Because investment, like foreign direct investment, only comes to countries or places that have the necessary infrastructure. The connectivity is important. It goes beyond only, going to bring somebody to invest. But if that person comes, he's looking at the basic infrastructure that is in place. Energy is one of that. Exactly. Road construction is one of that. The transport system is, part of it. So all these things, if they are not there, we cannot generate growth because you cannot retain people. And if they come, what they end up doing is to ask for heavy fiscal incentives for them to be able to be there. And that is so expensive on government. So that's why you must make a choice between do you want to give those fiscal incentives to potential investors, they come on poor infrastructure, or you want to build the infrastructure yourself so you attract quality foreign investors.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look at what is happening in agriculture, for instance, this private person who is Maro Farms.
Yes, I heard about it.
So you see where he's established. He needs a transport system that is adequate to be able to transport his produce from where he's producing it to the supply to the supermarket that is here.
It's very clear when before the advent of these combo coastal roads, Tanje and Gunjur will produce a lot of fish, but then you can't get it everywhere on time.
And they perish.
They perish.
Yeah, and there was no cold storage.
Exactly.
Yeah, so infrastructure goes only beyond the road, but there is cold storage necessities that are also as a result of what is being produced.
You mentioned energy here. Revenue from energy sector, mining sector, have been a bone of contention between civic society people, saying that we actually don't know, or we don't generate what definitely we should generate from mining license or concessions given. How have your ministry dealt with that? How much money are you realizing or you projected that will come from mining?
I do not have the number on top of my head, but I know this is generally managed by the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy under the Geology Department by the issuance of mining licenses. And mining licenses are in different categories. You have the sand mining and
for example,
and you also have the mineral mining and you also have the oil mining.
There's much talk about our potentials for oil. Every now and here you said block A, block B, will there be exploration, etc. How do you know from the ministry how concrete or how realistic you think, are we far or are we near such mineral or oil boom, so to speak?
It's not my domain. I do not know how much or how close they are to finding commercially viable deposits of these minerals.
I guess that will solve all your problems.
I know the mining sector has generated revenue for government. About 2 years ago or so, we had more than $35 million from one oil exploration company in the Gambia. So I think the money is coming. Mining is in such a way that the revenues that come at the exploration phase are not much, because the cost outlay by the company that is doing mining is much more higher. So you don't expect to generate much in terms of revenues until he happens to find a commercially viable deposit, and then he starts to explore those. But we are getting our share in terms of mining royalty, licenses, and all those things. But this is maybe you can contact the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy. They can set more light on this.
Finally, let's come to the elephant in the room at the ministry, because of course the central bank is under your ministry. There were reports of hacking. The central bank actually came out, or the government, your ministry came out to say only a segment of only one server or so have been affected. Then we have this overpaying of civil servants. Crazy sums that people will never even have been able to earn in their whole life have happened. And the central bank said very little. I must say, central bank don't talk about these things very in detail. They said very little. But what has happened? Your ministry told us that okay, central bank was migrating to a better system. It's a French system, but there was an error. 0 digits were multiplied, etc. What had happened?
On the hacking of the central bank, I have no idea.
Let's say the recent overpaying of ridiculous sums.
The overpay too, I have little idea, because
what did the ministry know about it?
Personally, I have no much ideas, and I do not want to preempt.
How much millions were you paid yourself from the error?
I do not want to disclose that, but all I can tell you that the money has been reversed from my account.
How many million was it?
I don't want to disclose that, but the money has been.
But what had happened? What did the central bank told you, Minister?
I've not spoke to the central bank.
But you saw their statement, of course.
Yeah, I saw the statement, and the statement says they are trying to deploy a new system.
Yes.
And I think, deployment of new system also comes with challenges in terms of technical glitch. That is part of system upgrade. So, but the good thing is that this thing has been reversed, and now everybody is able to access your account, those who were affected. Because at one point they were, their accounts were freeze. You cannot make a transaction.
Yes.
Yes, just so we are able to recover the monies that were overpaid.
I mean, we will never get to know what happened exactly.
No, eventually what you can do is to reach out to the central bank to get more information. Maybe keep pushing. Yeah, that will help.
Finally, let me give you the last word for this budget. In the whole global perspective, from the ministry's point of view, how do you think, how effective or how well do you think this budget will address the current realities of our economy?
Yeah, the budget was prepared.
You are free to pinpoint areas.
Yeah, the budget was prepared on the basis of government priorities, projects and programs. And I think if you look at the numbers, they also speak in the same. If you look at the social sectors that I highlighted earlier, they're speaking that about 33% of the budget is going to social sectors. And the other thing is that about the budget deficit has been reduced to 3.9 billion from 4.5, which is about 3% of GDP. And the domestic borrowing has also been reduced to about 2 billion compared to about 4 billion thereabout. So in the preparation of the budget, there were certain fiscal conditions that were put in place to guide the preparation of the budget. And the deficit reduction, debt sustainability, domestic borrowing was part of these key fiscal variables that were considered for the preparation of the budget, especially in recognition of our program with the IMF. Yeah, because these are very important engagements, and they are necessary for our economic management policy, to improve our economic conditions.
In fact, I forgot to mention your relation and working with IMF. How is that?
Yeah, it's a very useful engagement with them, and I think if you do look at what has happened since the pandemic, you will realize that they've been very forthcoming with support.
Yes.
And to the extent that they were among the first people who put support on the table of government in terms of additional support to the government of the Gambia, that gave leeway or a headroom to other development partners to come. Because IMF is one of the only international institute in economic and financial management that does surveillance, like country diagnostic of economic conditions. And when they do that, it is after this that other development partners will come and develop trust.
If they give you a clean bill of health, others follow.
Exactly. It's like a doctor and a patient. If the doctor doesn't do a clean health assessment, the pharmacist cannot give you the medicine.
Correct,
So unless you have this, then this other thing is not possible. So, and the IMF assessment of the country at that time was positive, and it generated a lot of domestic international support for the Gambia, from the World Bank, from the EU, AFD, which is Agence Française de Développement, and then you have African Development Bank, you have UN systems, you can name them,
And you continue really to enjoying that trust?
Yeah, we would continue to enjoy that trust,
Alagie Jallow from the Revenue and Tax Department of the Ministry of Finance, thank you very much for sharing your time with us on the brunch this week, which has been a look at the budget that was presented by the Minister of Finance, C.D. Kerr, last Friday. That was yesterday, actually. We promise we will discuss the budget with more of our experts next week and the other coming weeks, and we hope you will then join us next week. I'm Lavin Cham. Bye for now. Oh, Alagie.
We live in a day and age where technology is creating a world without borders, filled with unlimited potential to improve the lives of the people around us. Innovarex Global Health ushers in a new way of leveling the playing field with increased access to quality healthcare services delivered at your doorstep. Our qualified professionals are equipped with state-of-the-art point-of-care testing technology to conduct tests such as kidney function, liver function, electrolyte tests, body composition, hemoglobin, A1C, and many more services with the highest efficiency in delivering results. The addition to our flagship Wellness on Wheels, more fondly known as WOW Delivery Service, brings the entire clinical experience full circle. IGH has remained committed to creating the future of healthcare delivery. Gone are the days of sending loved ones outside the country for basic medical services. Innovarex Global Health offers a new peace of mind and takes pride in delivering the quality of care we all deserve.
Islamic microfinance is becoming an increasingly popular mechanism for poverty alleviation, especially for developing countries around the world. This microfinance service adheres to the principles of Islam as a form of social responsibility. Yona Islamic Microfinance is the Islamic microfinance of choice in the Gambia, trustworthy and reliable. At Yona Islamic Microfinance, we provide savings products, current accounts, financing products in conformity with Islam. In addition, Yona Islamic Microfinance also offers local and international remittances, takaful fund, management of zakat, management of awqaf, trading and investment, and building of strategic partnerships to bring financial services to the doorstep of the poor with donor projects, madrasas, youth organizations, women groups, and farmer organizations. Make a choice with Yona Islamic Microfinance today. For more information on Yona Islamic Microfinance, call 377-2151 or 9832-151 or visit Yona head office at Tipa Garage, Bakote, or visit any Yona branch located countrywide near you.